From the shadows, she appears. Jennylyn show, illuminates and tells me all yearn to know. With beats that pulse and sense that ignite, taking us to new heights.
Hello, you're watching Jennylyn, Conversations with Jennylyn. And today I'm having the conversation by myself, like I have been with the last four segments that I've produced. And today is going to be the fifth segment. And today, if you have not seen the previous segments of this show I'm producing that I'm calling My Nightmare, please go take a look at the previous segments, because then what I'm sharing today will make more sense to you. Today, I would like to share with you studies or a show that has been produced by Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens happen to be two journalists that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And the reason is because they report facts, well-researched facts. The majority of what they've produced, I've researched, and I'm in agreement with them. It is not scripted propaganda, but facts. And so today, I'd like you to refer to a YouTube video that has been produced by Tucker Carlson that is related to what I'm going to share today. I know those of you who've watched my previous segments must have some sorts of difficulty understanding and believing what I'm telling you. And I do understand that as humans, cognitive dissonance gets in the way of things that sound far-fetched and that are out there because it's not relatable, simply because the education system didn't teach this to us. And most of our parents weren't privy to it either, so they couldn't teach us. So this sort of comes out of nowhere. And I want you to know I was one of those people that had heard of stuff like this and was amused by it. But for some reason, I was looped into this experience. And I think it's because I'm someone who doesn't care what people think of me. And when I'm tasked with something by God, I do it unreservedly because He is the one that I live for. God, whatever God means to you, God, my God, or the God that I worship and trust in, is the one who's gotten me out of all these dark situations that I'm sharing with you. And so back to what I wanted to tell you is, if you're having trouble understanding this, please go look at the Tucker Carlson YouTube videos that are on supernatural beings taking physical form in our world currently. And they've been for years, but I think more awareness is being brought to this. And there are studies that were done by Harvard University that shows the possibility that alien beings that are referred to as cryptoterrestrials, which that evolved alongside us, that are hiding in the ocean and under the earth, but are actively participating in what is happening in our world today. And apparently it has been for years, just that no one was aware of it. People couldn't identify what it was, and those who did could not speak about it for fear of losing their lives. Today's segment is 5 of the series, and I'd like to dedicate today's segment to a good friend. She is from India, from Delhi. Her name is Samya Vardhan, and she played a huge part also in helping me along this journey. After I returned from Guyana, which was the segment I shared with you last week, things got worse. because Cassandra was aware that I had gone to get help and wanted to show me how much power she had. So things got increasingly worse. About the same time, a friend called me up and told me there's a young woman who had just moved to California from India, and her husband worked for Apple, and she was looking to make friends with people in the community. And she told her, "You should meet Jenny. I think you two would get on great. You have a lot in common." And so she made the introduction. Samia and I hit it off immediately. She's got a very similar disposition to mine, and so it was easy for her to connect with me. And since she was new to the area and didn't have friends, she and I started doing a lot of things together. And she soon discovered my secret. And it turns out that her family has a business in Delhi, a puja business. Now, puja, if you don't know, is a part of the Hindu religion, and it's you can do the research on it because I don't want to tell you or share incorrect information. All I know is that her father and she tried to help me. They did a puja in India for me. We were on I can't remember the app now, before we started with WhatsApp. There was an app that you could use in other countries, and I'm just not thinking of the name now. And we used that, and we did prayers like for hours with them in India and me in California. Now I had to repeat what they were saying, which I worried that it might not help me because I couldn't say the words correctly, and because we were on the computer, I couldn't always hear clearly what they're saying. So I don't even know if I was repeating what I was being told to repeat correctly. Anyway, she also had an instrument that could measure dark energies. I think it was manufactured in Germany. And while she was in India, she took a course on how to use this. And it was part of their business, which they charge quite a bit of money for, but she didn't charge me anything. And we went through my house and pulled out a lot of things that were contaminated. In case you forgot, Cassandra had a woman in New York deceived me into thinking she was Christian, and I was doing Bible study with her, trusted her, and imported her to California. And she actually came to California on my dime and stayed in my home under the pretense of coming to help me. But in truth and in fact, she was working for Cassandra and needed to get into my home to get personal items of mine to make whatever they were doing more powerful. So while she was at my house, she contaminated a lot of what I had. So Sonia came through the house with this device, and you can't argue with it. I saw it myself, and pointed out which things in my house had to be gotten rid of. And so we got rid of all of these, and Samya always held my hand, and she and her family continued to do prayers for me in India because they could see the evil that was being sent my way every day. Her father had a ring made for me in India and sent it to California, which I wore, and I also tested that because I loved her and I trusted her, but I had gotten to a place in my life where I had to be really, really careful because although they could have had good intentions, it didn't necessarily mean that it was going to help me. So I wore the ring they made for me, and I still have it. And I have to tell you that during the period of time that I wore that ring, it really made a difference. However, I'd like to reiterate something that I mentioned on the previous segment, and which is because Cassandra had a team of people working for her in addition to what she was doing in her home, which people in her home probably thought was part of her science project, because CasSandra, as far as I know, is a scientist. It was really not for the science they were thinking. It was designed to help to her, to me, and the other people she was doing this to, because I wasn't the only one. And so, even though these people were helping me, and looking back, I got angry at a lot of the people that I paid to help me that didn't help me. But now, working with Mel, I can see the reason they couldn't help me is because she's doing this every day. These types of people can help someone who it's done to once, and that's it. But if someone is actively doing this to you every day, you have to fight it every day. And that is what we're doing now. Mel, I've learned not to put people on pedestals, but I have Mel on one now because she truly has integrity. And every day since I met her, we are working to clear away what is being sent to me. Because, yes, it is continuing, although it's almost over, and I'm certain of it. So Samia helped me as much as she can and could, but it didn't really make a huge difference for very long. And the more people helped me, the more it became intense after periods of a break when I thought it was over. It's at this point I met a woman from Guyana who was a flight attendant, that someone that I knew worked with, because she was also a flight attendant. And she told me this woman had written a coffee table book, and that since I'm Guyanese and she's Guyanese, I should invite her on my show to promote her coffee book. And her name was Dina. So I met Dina. She was really it was great to connect with somebody from Guyana because she made a lot of Guyanese food, and I was able to enjoy some of the Guyanese traditions through this friendship. And as usual, anyone who got close to me started realizing there was something odd about the way my life was working out, or things were happening in my life. And so pretty soon she found out what was happening and decided she was going to help me because she has a beautiful spirit and really didn't like to see me dealing with what I was dealing with and suffering like I was. So I shared with her what the priest had told me, that there were portals in my yard and that these things were coming out of there, or the things that were affecting my life were coming out of the portals in the ground. So she decided we're going to find those portals and we're going to plug them up. So we got a device that were going to help us locate the stuff in the ground and dig them up, except we didn't know what the heck we were looking for. So after days and days of trying to find what it could be to block it, to no avail, because we didn't know what we were looking for, she went online to try to find me help. Now, this is one thing I've learned. And what I've learned, I'm sharing in case you're dealing with any of this. Whenever these people are doing this work, they always use young trees, the root of trees. So we later found out the portals were at the roots of almost every young tree that was in the backyard of the house where I lived. And so it's at this point Dina found the person that I'm going to share with you next, Venkat. And Venkat was also from India. What's really strange at this particular time, it might seem like coincidence, at least it felt that way to me, that I was being led to people from India who practiced the Hindu religion, and they were all trying to help me. So the first day we found Venkat, we called him on the phone. I think she found him on Google. We called him on the phone, and she was on the other line with me because she thought I was so desperate for help that whenever we found those people, I just gave them too much information up front. So she got online with me to make sure I wouldn't get emotional and give too many details of what was happening to test how much they really knew based on what they said. So we got Venkat on the line, and he asked if the typical question everyone asks, did I have any idea of who it was? I sent him the same 10 pictures while we were on the phone. He looked at them, came back once again, and identified CasSandra. So he told me he needed to come to my house. And I was afraid at this point because I'd gone down so many rabbit holes. I asked him what it would cost me, because no one does it for free, and I get it. Just like you go to the dentist, just like you go to the doctor, this is what they sit and do all day, and they have families that they have to support. So I get that, they have to charge you to do this. Plus, what they're dealing with, it's not easy. I know because I lived it. So I thought, well, okay, what he was charging was kind of in line with what everyone else charged. And I told him that I wasn't going to pick him up, that if this was his business, he'd have to come to my house on his own. So he did. He took an Uber to my home. And a part of me didn't want him to come because at this point, I was so afraid to trust people, and because he was random, we kind of pulled him out of a hat on Google. I didn't feel very comfortable with him. But anyway, he showed up and he walked around my house and pointed out the same areas that Samya's machine had identified as areas of my house that I needed to get rid of. So now I knew for sure I had to throw these things out. And it was difficult because some of them were really sentimental to me. Not far from where I lived was a church with a huge dumpster in the back. So Venkat did some prayers on me and cleared some stuff, and I felt better, and he left. But he said we had a lot of work to do and that he would contact his grandfather in India and they would get to work on helping me. So when he left my home, I put all these things in the back of my car. I drove to where the church dumpster was and I threw the stuff in the dumpster. I went back home, and that night was a night from hell. So I called Venkat and I said, this is what happened tonight, this and this and this. And so he told me he wanted me to get a t-shirt that I didn't mind throwing away, preferably a dark t-shirt. And he wanted me to sleep in it. And then he would tell me what to do with it. So that night, I slept in the t-shirt, and in the morning he called me and he said to take it off and fold it up and put it in a plastic bag, and that I needed to go to his home with it. I didn't know what we were going to do with the t-shirt. There's a lot of things that you will have to read the book if you want details, because it's really difficult to put them out there on this particular platform. Excuse me. So I drove to his home at the appointed time that he told me to be there. And in his home, he had a room set up for his work. It looked like an altar to me. And he was dressed in his outfit that shamans wear, because he was a shaman. So I got there, I took my shoes off, his wife and kids were there, I said hello to them, and I went into his office. And I looked down on the ground, and he had what looked to me like a Hindu altar set up, because I'd seen it in pictures, seen it in books, and because of my friendship with Samya, I was familiar with it. So after we did some prayers, he put me to sit down on the ground. He had a huge white plastic bottle with a lid. The really big ones that you can get cheese balls in, the extra large ones on the ground. And he had some seeds. I think they looked like coriander seeds. And he told me that he wanted me to put them in my mouth and chew them. And then I would spit it out, which I did. And then we both went on the ground on this mat that he had prepared, and we prayed. He told me to pray to Jesus, and he prayed to Shiva, or the God that he prayed to. He says, pray to your God, and I'm going to pray to my God. And while I'm praying, I want you to keep praying and don't stop, and just believe that Jesus will bring these demons out, or whatever the things were, entities. He called them entities. I had no idea what I was in for. None. But I was trusting. I am sort of a daredevil. If I have a problem and I want it solved, and I don't have the tools to solve it by myself, and God directs me to people, or somehow people show up through good friends, I do what they tell me to do, unless it's going against my grain, unless it causes me to question my integrity. I pray about it. And I have to tell you, I learned to hear the voice of God and my angels through this experience. I got the okay to do what he was telling me, so I sat down on the ground with him and I prayed. I asked my guides and my angels to come there and to protect me. I got down on my knees. He was across from me. We were on a mat on the ground near the altar. He had a lot of turmeric set out on the ground and a lot of limes set out in a pattern. And we were praying. And I kept praying and he kept praying and he kept using his hands like this to me, like, keep on praying, keep on praying, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I'm praying to God, praying to Jesus, and tears are running down my eyes. I'm scared. I don't know what the heck is going on, but I am trusting him. And so we kept praying, he kept praying, I kept praying, and all of a sudden, while he's praying, he has the black t-shirt that I had slept in, folded in 4 quarters, and he's holding the top of it and the bottom portion of these quarters flat with his palms. He's holding them down and he's telling me to pray. Every now and then he'd remove one hand to tell me to keep praying. And eventually, he kept saying, it's coming, keep praying, keep praying. I saw this little, swear to you, it first appeared like the pen tip of, like a light the size of a pen tip. And as I kept praying, it started getting bigger and bigger, and it started to look like a fire starting to burn in the middle of my t-shirt, in the middle of the quarter of the t-shirt. And then he pushed me back, pushed me away. He grabbed it really fast and stuffed it inside the big bottle that was there and corked it. And I could hear this thing. It sounded like it was boiling in the bottle and it was making sounds. He said it was talking. I don't know what it was saying. So, for all of you people who don't believe what I'm telling you, I get it. I get that you don't believe, but I'm not a liar and I am not crazy. That thing, I saw it with my 2 eyes, was in that jar, and it was angry that it was caught and it kept trying to come out. He locked the jar really tight and then he wrapped it in a cloth and he put it in what looked like a container. And then he told me to go outside. And I went and sat with his wife and his children. And I don't know what he did with it. After a while, he called me back in to his office, into his altar. And I went and I sat with him. And he said, that was one of the entities that's around you, but there's a lot. I don't know if we can get them all, but I'm going to try to find information from this one on what is really going on and how we could plug the portals. And he said, so for now, I want you to go home and keep praying, keep God's protection around you. And I'll call you later tonight before you sleep. And then he sent me some prayers and some chants where I had to say, and this was their Hindu religion. Now, this is my personal opinion. I don't want anybody going after my jugular. I respect everyone's beliefs, especially after what has happened to me. I believe there are cults out there, but there are also religious, there are also religions, or I don't like religion, I don't believe in religions or philosophies. It's probably the word I'm looking for, that are all pathways to God. They're all portions of God where different people in different parts of the world just worship in different ways. But unless it's a cult or unless it's somehow part of the dark evil agenda, they're pathways to God. And so I learned a lot about the Hindu religion during this experience. And I would say to a large extent, it helped me. I went home and he sent me some prayers that I had to say that night. And he told me the next day he was going to come to my house and we would set up some altars in the back of the house where the portals were. He also told me that his grandfather in India was going to make some statues that they were going to bury in the ground to somehow not refute, but diffuse the power of the portals in the ground in the back of the house where I lived. At this time, I want to tell you, in the back of that house, on the back side of my fence, was a huge tree. I think it was an oak or a pine tree. It's one of the very messy trees that drops the cones and the branches with the leaves that make a mess. The day that he came and set up his altars in the yard, it was like something was in the tree, just clipping the leaves and littered the deck of my house, the deck that was in the back of the house. I cannot make this up. Everyone around me saw it. And this was just the beginning. After this day, I mean, pine trees drop leaves. When there's a storm or when it's very windy, leaves fall. But this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like someone is on the tree just dropping the leaves in the back of my house. It looked like a carpet back there. And this is no exaggeration. I had pictures of all of this, which I've lost when I lost the cloud where I was storing them. Venkat's grandfather in India had made the statues and they FedExed them to the US so that he can get them in the ground at a certain time while he was still holding that entity that we caught that he now has in his home in a bottle. And I asked him, how could you keep this thing in your house with your kids and your wife living here? And he said that his family was protected and that they couldn't hurt his family. And what he was trying to do was remove them from around me, and then he was going to protect me and my family. Except these things were just coming out of the woodwork because I had the woman from New York who stayed at the house, who was working for CasSandra, and CasSandra and her team constantly going to the property and doing what they do to open up the portals. It was making it challenging for him. And because she watches me all the time, don't ask me how, she knew he was trying to help me. Every time someone tried to help me, all of the things that happened intensified. So after a few days, he had to dispose of the entity. Don't know how. I think they take them to the cemetery and bury them. I'm not sure how. I didn't want to know. But things just got worse. And so after that day, I bought a blower. And everyone who lived next to me could tell you 3, 4 times a day, I was in the back of my house blowing these leaves and picking them up by the bucketfuls and putting them in trash bags and putting it on the side of the road. In fact, most people who visited me at that time in California will tell you they saw it. And my neighbor Cheryl, of course, she can tell you. She even said to me, "Why are you wasting your time picking it up when they're going to throw more down?" And it was so unnatural because the people living on the side of the fence where the tree was physically rooted, they didn't have any of these issues. So it almost felt like there was something up in the tree that I couldn't see, just throwing these things down on my yard. These people tried their best to torment me. They did everything they could to torment me. So Venkat and I continued to do this. 2 or 3 times after this, we did the same thing and caught more of these entities. I would say we caught a total of 10 in the period of time that he worked for me. And this is what made me trust him because I saw him and he couldn't fake this. I was there throughout the whole event in its entirety. And I saw how he caught them. And I know they came from around me, although I couldn't see them. Then he came to my house. He brought his family, and they spent a night at my house to try and see if we could get more than one while they were at the house. But we only really succeeded in getting one. And early the next morning, he and his family left and he went home with what we got. And again, I continued with the prayers, and more of the same happened. So one day I just woke up and I decided I'm moving out of that house. I started packing everything, and then I realized that wherever I went, this was happening. And so I didn't know it would make a lot of sense for me to move anywhere. And I'm going to end today. And next week, I will tell you what happened. That's almost impossible to believe. I'm sure a lot of this is impossible to believe. If someone would have told me that they would catch one of these things, because I know something is around me. I hear them. They've left physical evidence that they're around me. I thank God I don't see them. Whatever my gift is, I don't see them. I know they're there. I can hear them and I feel them. And there's no way I could deny their presence. But if someone would have told me that we would physically catch one of these things in a bottle, I would tell them they're nuts, even though I was experiencing what I was. But I lived to tell you, we caught 10 of them, and they were all placed in jars by the shaman who was helping me, that is known as Venkat. So Venkat and I went through circles with this, and then eventually he just told me he didn't think there's more they could do to help me. They had tried everything, but they're working against someone who's working every day and who had a lot of money and was paying a lot of money to people to do what was happening to me. And so I was left feeling like this is going to be my life. Meanwhile, everything I tried to do was blocked. Every job I interviewed for, I couldn't get. I have a lot of work experience, and I'm a great value add to any company that would hire me, but no one was hiring me. And I later found out I was blocked from having money, friends, family, job. And these are all areas of my life where it was evident to everyone around me something was not right, because I went from the life I had to this life, and I've done nothing to warrant this. So thank you for watching me. Thank you for following this series. I am going to repeat, I have nothing to gain from doing this. I have no personal agenda with this, but God and my guides have asked me to share it because there are people suffering that are less courageous, and they are more concerned about what people think of them, and so they suffer in the dark. But I don't really care what anyone thinks, and I'm going to continue because this has been my life that I have been living. And once again, I want to thank Melanie Lawson. Go see her. She's on TikTok. Follow her. She channels messages every day from the angels. And for some reason, I'm always blanking on her handle on TikTok. But her name is Melanie Lawson. And she is turning things around. After 19 years, God has finally led me to my help. And the last two segments of this show, she will be coming on with me to tell you what it's been like compared to the other jobs she's done, and how defiant and how dark and evil CasSandra really is. I almost said her last name. Anyway, thank you, and I will be back with segment 6 next week.
From the shadows, she appears. Jennylyn show, illuminating sincerity.